everyone. Thanks for staying with BERNAMA TV. You are watching BERNAMA World with me, PASHA RAHIM. The 46th ASEAN Summit has just concluded here in Kuala Lumpur with leaders tackling big issues. Now we're talking from economic integration and regional security to digital transformation and global partnerships. But what do the outcomes really mean for ASEAN's future? To help us unpack these key takeaways, we're joined by NORDIN ABDULLAH, founding chairman of the Malaysia Global Business Forum. NORDIN, welcome to the show. It's been a while.
It's been a while. It's great to see you again, Pasha. It's good to be here.
Yeah, fantastic. So let's go straight into it. How would you encapsulate the spirit of the recently concluded 46th ASEAN Summit? And really, what is it that stood out the most to you?
Well, for me, the thing that stood out the most, it was not about the summit itself. It was about how everyone in Kuala Lumpur was really part of making sure that the summit worked well. And, you know, Malaysians and people who live in KL were very patient, and, you know, they were all very much part of the team, even though they weren't seen during that time. So kudos to everybody there. But when coming back to the idea of the spirit, really I see the fact that there's a lot of turbulence in the global geopolitical realities, and for Malaysia to put on a show like this and bring together so many high-powered leaders in the spirit of friendship, really, and in the spirit of moving things along in a way that is very positive. And I think this is something that ASEAN can do. And we've been able to do it in a very Malaysian style, right. And it's been very much well appreciated by the various countries.
Right. So they've just signed the Kuala Lumpur Declaration, and this is a target that they've set for 2045. Previously, the previous agreement, I think, was signed in November 2015. That was 10 years ago. Just to compare, over these 10 years, have we achieved what we've set out to achieve in that previous community vision? And also, what can we expect from the newly agreed upon Kuala Lumpur Declaration?
Well, one, it's a 20-year program, and I think this is one of the things when you start to look at the longer vision of where ASEAN needs to get to. One, for ASEAN as a grouping, and two, for its member states. I think this is very important. And putting together a plan like that means you're actually planning for a sustainable future.
Right.
And that, for me, is very important. But some of the things that you, again, don't see is the amount of technical meetings, the amount of detailed meetings that go in. Imagine last year when Laos was chairman, there was a huge list, 36, 37 pages of all these very technical meetings and all these detailed programs. This year, it's up to 47, 48 pages. So the amount of work that is going into the project that is ASEAN is immense. And that's across the entire economy, that's across the entire political spectrum.
Right.
And also more partners are coming. You want to see what Australia does, what Canada does, what China does. Everyone wants to plug in. Everyone wants to be part of this growth story. So it's very much about the future. It's very much about Malaysian-style leadership in ASEAN, because there's still plenty of problems to deal with.
Yeah.
But you've still got this approach where, look, let's work together. Yes, we know we've got issues. We've got issues around trade. We've got issues around defense. We've got issues around security. But we can sit down and sit around the table and make sure something actually happens. So kudos to Malaysia.
Right. So you talked about all of these technical meetings, things that we don't see behind the scenes, right? Just for the benefit of the public, because what we do see is the big hookah, the big party, the roadblocks. But really, what concrete commitments or follow-up mechanisms do you think are necessary to ensure that this declaration is not just a show and that it doesn't just stay on paper, that all the countries really commit to it?
Well, actually, for me, through those technical meetings and through those detailed approaches, one area which I'm very excited about is actually poverty reduction. And of course, that goes together with a lot of things around food security. So ensuring some of those details are sorted out, this creates internal strength within ASEAN. And once you have that internal strength, furthering beyond the, of course, we see, like you said, the flashy stuff, the exciting stuff, But actually, when you see that economic journey that involves everybody, that is a journey of resilience. So ensuring that happens in every member country, and ensuring that, and this is where we're starting to see further intra-ASEAN trade, further intra-ASEAN investment, and movement of talent. These are going to be the three areas that I see are critical for success.
Talking about trade, let's focus on regional economy, trade, and investment. Now, if we look at the member countries of ASEAN, you know, it's very obvious that there is an economic gap between countries, right? So, what are some of the key economic strategies that has emerged from this summit to ensure or to help ASEAN remain competitive and also resilient, and especially, you know, not leaving behind certain countries?
Well, this is the thing. I mean, certain countries and certain sectors within and certain groups within those countries. For me, it's going to be about ensuring we get enough investment in, and investment is going to come one from other ASEAN countries, and we see Singapore playing a very leading role in driving investment into Singapore that then gets redistributed into other ASEAN countries. But now we see one of the key things, and it may have not been noticed by many players, but actually the GCC China ASEAN Summit, now, you know, we see areas of high concentrations of capital coming to Malaysia, looking at high growth areas that ASEAN can put on the table. So when we see things like Malaysia talking about energy security for its own domestic consumption, but then realizing, look, actually parts of Malaysia like Sarawak are now going to be part of Indonesia's energy security, part of Singapore's energy security. So now you're starting to realize that we're better together.
Yeah.
And the strategies are in key sectors which will drive investment, which will drive the jobs, which will drive people's incomes, and that will also just raise that floor, as they say, and raise the ceiling, so that you're bringing ASEAN, its member states, and the businesses that operate within those economies up.
Right. I think what we don't realize is how interdependent we are between countries. I mean, obviously, we're part of a similar geographically region. I think one of the major concerns, you know, recently is the U.S. tariffs. Now, some countries have a higher tariff than the others, and I think one of the things that they talked about is that the leaders have agreed that any trade agreements would not negatively impact any other ASEAN members. What do you have to say about that?
Well, this is a very interesting area, because you've seen the U.S. has stated that the U.S. will have bilateral negotiations on trade agreements. ASEAN and PM just mentioned that, hey, we've written and said we want a multilateral discussion. Yeah. So it's good that we continue down the path of multilateralism. It means that we're understanding the position of our neighbors. At the same time, yes, there's going to be a competitive strategy for Malaysia when it has a better tariff reality. Right. But at the same time, other countries will have other competitive advantages that we don't have. But when you start to think at ASEAN and not just Malaysia, and you start to say, look, this is our supply chain and our value chain within ASEAN, you start to think differently. And that's what I've seen in the last couple of days, this kind of understanding of supply chain, deeper understanding of value chains. And now when you negotiate these very important bilateral, multilateral agreements, is what is the geopolitical impact, but also what's the business impact. Right. And this has become more and more apparent as the US does the same thing on the other side of the coin. Yeah, so with regards to, you know, the whole ASEAN approach to, you know, like you mentioned, supply chain and also investment incentives and, you know, certain digital economy frameworks, what do you think are some of the key discussions or signals moving forward? Well, there was plenty of discussions around cybersecurity digital security and the digital economy that took place during the summit, as well as some of the side meetings. And I think this is one area that Malaysia has to take leadership, especially as we are looking to attract a lot of those digital assets and those data centers and that entire value chain. So if we can get that equation right, we then become the leverage point for the other ASEAN countries to be able to leverage off. That starts to become very interesting as we take advantage of this geographic location at the same time.
Right. Nordin, we're going to move on to geopolitics, and also we're talking about the Myanmar crisis. I think one of the more important issues that has been talked about during the summit. But we are going to take a very, very short break, and we'll be right back right after this. Don't go anywhere.
Jambatan ini sepatutnya menghubungkan kita. Tapi sebab rasuah, ianya kekal begini.
Negara semakin maju, tapi disebabkan rasuah, kami terus ketinggalan.
Atlet kita boleh jadi jago dunia sebenarnya. Tapi rasuah merosakkannya.
Rasuah seperti bara. Jika dibiarkan, ia akan terus merebak. Jadi kita harus membenterasnya sehingga ke akar umbi.
Saya nak melihat negara Malaysia menjadi kebanggaan anak cucu kita tanpa rasuah.
Tekad kita harus tegas dalam isu penyalahgunaan kuasa dan rasuah. Rasuah meruntuhkan negara.
Segak kau hari ni? Nak pergi kerja ke? Aku kat sini lah. Depan kau. Kau kan dah jadi pegawai kanan dah sekarang ni. Masuk je lambat.
Tak. Itu tanggungjawab aku.
Hai Syafiq. Pegawai kanan ni banyak faedah dia. Kau boleh guna kuasa kau.
Kuasa apa?
Tu?
Kau nak aku buat apa dengan fail ni?
Kau boleh guna maklumat-maklumat tu untuk kepentingan kau.
Tak. Kerja aku untuk tangkap orang yang buat salah. Bukan aku yang buat salah.
Tak ada siapa yang tahu.
Tak. Aku takkan benarkan. Tidak sama sekali. Kau diam. Diam. Aku takkan diam.
Integriti, refleksi anda. Hargai diri, lindungi maruah. Hindari salah laku.
Welcome back. You're with me, PASHA RAHIM. On BERNAMA World, we're talking to NORDIN ABDULLAH. So let's move on with our conversation. So we're going to talk about we're going to talk about geopolitics and regional integration. Now, one of the key issues that has been brought up is the Myanmar crisis. Was there any progress at the summit with regards to ASEAN's approach to the crisis, and how are we balancing engagement with accountability?
Well, I think the 5-point plan has still been, that's the way forward that ASEAN has said, look, this is how we're going to go about it. I think, historically ASEAN has not been, what's the right word for it, internal, going into other countries' internal matters. But I think in this day and age, just simply talking about it is already, you're in the discussion whether you like it or not.
Right.
There are many people from Myanmar here in Malaysia, in Indonesia, in Thailand, so there's been movement of people out of that country. And there's also internally displaced people. So the fact that this political reality, domestic political reality within Myanmar persists, I think it remains a problem for ASEAN. But I think ASEAN has been very patient. I think they've been very correct in their positioning. And I think they are looking, I think Tan Sri Othman, if I'm not mistaken, has really been at the forefront of that for ASEAN. And again, it's showing Malaysian leadership that a Malaysian is being appointed into that position.
Right, but with their ongoing non-compliance, is there going to be any repercussion for Myanmar?
Well, it's a question that how far will other countries go? Are we going to start to think about sanctions or trade-related issues? I don't think that is really the way forward. It doesn't work
and we've never really done that.
It's not going to work.
Yeah.
So I think we don't probably understand the conflict as much as we should. So if you don't understand the problem, how are you going to solve it? So I think as we go along, I think this collective approach and now saying, look, it is a collective problem. So how do we deal with that in a way that's not intruding, but at the same time we're helping? So it's this neighborly approach. You know that your neighbors have a problem. You can hear the fighting, but do you knock on the door and say, do you guys need any help? So it's going to be, I think, a long road ahead, and I think the patience needs to continue. But at the same time, we need to look at other ways in which we can influence positively the conflict, so that it can be addressed in a way that is not detrimental to the domestic population of Myanmar and the diaspora that now many hundreds of thousands of them now live throughout ASEAN. So this is actually an ASEAN problem.
Right. Just very quickly, the other issue is also South China Sea disputes. Maybe you'd like to zoom in on that a little bit.
Well, there's plenty to discuss there. I mean, of course, you've got the different overlapping claims. Of course, there's China's role in the South China Sea. And, of course, US is, and the US, Australia, the UK also saying, look, we need to keep this waterway open for trade.
Right.
So there's also a lot of movement there. But so far, again, we've not seen any disruption to trade. So while there's been a lot of talk about it, I think we're still able to manage our supply chains without any disruption. So as we see, it needs to be handled quietly. Some of that stuff may need to be handled behind closed doors before we start to deal with the issue in public. And I think that start to, again, it's an ASEAN way that needs to be looked at to solve some of these ASEAN problems, where sometimes it's a I know I'm a Mat Saleh, but sometimes the Western approach is like, okay, let's put everything out on the table and discuss it. It sometimes it may not work well that way.
You need a little bit of that Asian finesse as well. Right. Let's talk regional integration. Now, one of the themes of this year's ASEAN Summit is inclusivity, and we're seeing Timor-Leste, we're expecting that Timor-Leste to become a full member of ASEAN this October. They've been an observer. So what kind of impact will this expansion have on ASEAN's unity, on our capacity, and also what impact will it have, Timor-Leste joining ASEAN?
Well, I think one is the impact on ASEAN. I don't think it's going to have a huge impact, to be perfectly honest, in terms of increasing the numbers. It's not a very large population, but I think it has a huge impact in terms of the concept of exclusiveness. It's in the geographic location.
Right.
Of course, they've just really very recently won their independence.
Yeah.
So the fact that we're able to get through this, especially Indonesia, and move through that process of inclusion, it shows that things can be done in an ASEAN way. It can be done in a way that is accepting of the realities of what goes on the ground, but at the same time say, look, yes, there's a need for you to be part of this program that is ASEAN. So for Timor-Leste, I think it's a very good step. For ASEAN, it's a very good step. And it's proof that the ASEAN process can work.
Right, and the more the merrier, right?
Yeah, exactly. Get everyone involved. If it's a party, you want everyone there. So I think,
and we can't leave anyone behind. So
there's key economic resources under the ground and under the water in Timor-Leste as well. And as if this part of the ASEAN experiment can grow, then it means the rest of the economy will also grow.
Right. Let's talk about one other major development in the recent ASEAN summit is the China GCC summit. So how does ASEAN view this growing relationship between China and also the Gulf nations?
Well, I think after, President Donald Trump announced his set of tariffs, I think there was a shock that went through the global economy. Then everyone took a deep breath and said, okay, what's the solution to that? Of course, it's to find other trading partners and other investment partners and other supply chains that need to be built. So for Malaysia, this is a huge opportunity to take leadership because of the relationships that we have, especially with the GCC. And I think Malaysia, for the last 30, 40 years has brilliant relationships with the GCC, more so than a lot of other countries within ASEAN. So the ability to bring them to the table and say, look, we can trade directly with each other.
Right.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be the be-all and end-all is not trading with the US, is not trading with Europe. It's building out the economy. And that's why this thing that I keep talking about is poverty eradication is so important, because that means your domestic economy is stronger and you've got more consumption power. And that's one of the things that the GCC has, is a very strong, small population, but very strong consumption power in a lot of countries. So there's the political element as well, that it looks like ASEAN is now, again, able to engage with other groupings in a way that is positive. So this diplomatic engagement and the ability to engage and for them to respect that engagement. And you saw the high level people who came from the GCC. This again is projecting of this soft power that is ASEAN.
Right. Do you see, or will this pose, potential challenges, or do you think it will complement ASEAN's own strategic position within Asia and also within the global economy?
Well, there's always a challenge dealing with new business partners, and dealing with new economies. So being able to integrate is very much about improving quality and improving standards. So for Malaysian companies, it's going to be about improving standards and making sure that we are compliant to the destination markets that we're trying to sell things to. That strategy is not going to change. So what are the requirements of the GCC and can we meet them? So there's also that need for not just Malaysia, but the rest of other ASEAN countries to build up to that capacity. And that positive approach means that maybe the Arab world and the GCC say, okay, we'll reverse invest back into your economy to ensure that they themselves have the supply of the resources that they need. And especially the GCC, one of the key areas that Malaysia will continue to play an important role is in food security.
Right. So the ASEAN summit has just concluded yesterday, but it is not the end of it. Malaysia is still chair for the rest of the year. What does hosting this summit really mean? And what does it say about Malaysia's evolving role in ASEAN and also within the wider region? Where does that put Malaysia?
Well, it really put us on the map. I mean, when you look at it wasn't just news on BERNAMA, it was reported on BBC, CNN, and all the top news networks around the world. So there's a huge amount of country branding that just took place. But at the same time, there's still a ton of work that gets done.
Right.
And I mentioned earlier all these technical meetings that they still go on. It's almost like the summit's great for them, but when they start to talk about energy standards or food standards or details around different items, all that stuff still takes place. And so that is where you'll see regional integration. The political level has opened all these doors. So now it's for business and the government mechanisms underneath the political spectrum to go through it and take advantage of all that hard work.
Right.
So it's not just oh, look, this looks great, and I've got all these lovely photos. It's like, this looks great, got all these lovely photos, and now everyone get to work.
Right, so the summit has ended, the big party has ended, but really this is where the real work comes in. Thank you so much, Nordin, for all of your valuable insights today and for coming onto the show. As ASEAN charts its course forward, the real test really will be turning declarations, such as the KL Declaration, into action. That's all the time that we have for now. I'm PASHA Rahim. This was BERNAMA World. I'm signing off. Thank you for watching. Take care.